17 years of marriage built on lies. A family shattered by a single revelation. The truth came out in a hospital room when the doctors said the unthinkable. Alex wasn't his son. His wife had hidden a secret for 14 years, and the man he thought was his friend, Gary Dawson, was the real father. Every memory, every moment, a lie. Now the betrayal runs deep, and there's no turning back. Revenge is the only option, and the plan is already in motion. When it's over, nothing will remain the same. Everything they took, he'll take back. I'm sitting outside, enjoying a cold drink in the warm April sunshine. As I relax and breathe in the fresh morning air, I feel a familiar itch from my scar. It's a small scar, about 3 inches long, just above my waist on the left side of my back. As I scratch it, memories come rushing back to me, reminding me of the consequences of a lie. Susan and I have been married for 17 years, and for the most part, we've been happy. She has given me 3 wonderful children, Alex, Maddie, and Jacob. Susan is 4 years older than I am, and I often joked that I was her younger partner. She's not the most breathtaking woman, but many men would still notice her. She has a lovely figure, great legs, and a warm personality that brightens up any space. One thing that really attracted me to Susan was her love for kids. Even though I joked sometimes, I really wanted to be a dad. I was 21 when we got married, and Susan was 25. She felt the pressure of starting a family. Back then, people believed if you didn't have kids by 30, you might think about adoption. We tried for 18 months to have a baby, but when nothing happened, we spoke to specialists. During this time, all our friends were having children, many younger than Susan. One friend, Gary, had gotten his teenage girlfriend pregnant and married her. Susan went through many tests, and everything was normal. Then it was my turn, and I received the shocking news. I had a low sperm count, which made it unlikely I would ever have kids. I didn't know how to handle it. I felt like I failed the woman I loved, the one thing she wanted most. I would have understood if she had decided to leave me, but Susan was different. She promised to stick by me no matter what. I'm not sure if someone said something or if it was just because we'd been trying for so long, but my friends started teasing us about not having children. Gary was especially mean. His wife Sarah was expecting their second child. Whenever we met, he would bring up the topic and boast, "I just have to look at a woman and she gets pregnant. If you need help, Harry, give me a call. Your Susan isn't quite like Sarah, though." I often felt a strong urge to confront him about his comments. We looked into artificial insemination and started thinking about adoption. Then one day, a miracle happened. Susan called me at work to share the amazing news. She was pregnant. We were overjoyed, and Susan radiated happiness. I worked long hours to prepare, and by the time Alex was born, we had already set up a nursery for him. What do they say about buses? You wait a long time for one, and then 3 come at once. That's how it was with our kids. In 2 years, we had Maddie, and a year after that, Jacob. It seemed Harry Anderson was pretty lucky after all. We were as happy as could be. After Jacob, we decided 3 kids were enough. We had never thought much about birth control before, but now Susan chose to start the pill. We had our ups and downs, but it's true we had more good times than bad. This happiness didn't last, though. Just after Alex turned 14, our lives changed in a big way. One day, after school, he stepped off the curb and directly into the path of a big SUV. He was taken to the hospital, where we learned he had a few broken ribs, a significant head injury, and bruising. It could have been much worse, and Susan and I helped each other through the hard times. I was working for myself, designing control systems and consulting for the telecom industry. I had a tight deadline, so we made a plan for hospital visits. Susan would stay with Alex during the day so I could work at home, and I would take over at 4 p.m. until midnight when she returned to stay with him overnight. Meanwhile, her mother would look after the younger kids. After a couple of days, I noticed something felt off. Susan was only giving me vague details about what the doctors said, and I sensed she wasn't telling me everything. When I came in for my next shift, I asked her directly what was wrong with Alex. It turned out that due to the impact with the SUV, both of his kidneys had stopped working. They tried to help them, but there were no positive signs. Dialysis was an option, but it didn't work for everyone. The hospital had put Alex on the transplant waiting list. I didn't think much about it. Problem solved, he can have one of mine. I said casually. Susan started crying and said between sobs, "Oh, Harry, I just knew you'd say that, but it's not that simple." I tried to calm her down, and then she explained that they needed to do tests to match the tissue types for the kidney. She had already been tested and was waiting for the result. "Okay," I replied. "Who do I see to get my test done?" "They check you first," she said. "The best chances for a match come from close relatives. I'm already tested, but Maddie and Jacob are too young." For the first time in 17 years, I felt like Susan might be hiding something from me, and I didn't understand why. Susan went home to rest, and I stayed with Alex. He didn't look good. His body seemed swollen with fluids from the treatment, and he was only awake for short moments. That evening, there was a medical emergency on the ward, and I saw a doctor rushing in. I decided to wait for him to find out more about what was happening. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept well in days. When I asked him about my son, he seemed irritated. He said he had spoken to my wife and that Alex needed a kidney transplant. He explained that it was best to find a match from a close family member. "Your wife has already been tested. I asked her to get the boy's father to come in for testing," he said. "Well, that's me, Doc. I'm Alex's father." "Oh, no," he replied. "I mean, it's nice that you care for him, but we need his biological father from your wife's first marriage." I was so surprised that I let him walk away. I tried calling Susan several times that night, but she didn't answer. When she showed up for her night shift, I decided not to talk about it. I mentioned I had tried to call, and she said she was in the garden and then went to her mom's house. I didn't believe her since I had already checked there. I went home but couldn't sleep. I kept wondering why she would hide something about her past. The only reason I could think of was that Alex wasn't really mine, and she knew it. The next day, I finished my project and sent the report to our client. I called and told them I couldn't do a presentation for at least a week, but they could share my work with their team to prepare for it. With that, I had my days free. That afternoon, I returned to the hospital. Susan looked upset. Her test results were negative. I thought, does this mean we need to find the boy's father? Could that be why she wasn't home last night? I did my best to comfort her and told her to go home and rest, even though I knew deep down she wouldn't. I waved goodbye as she walked out, then hurried to my car. In her state, she wouldn't have noticed me closely following her. I was right. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove to a new housing area on the edge of town. She stopped outside one of the houses and sat in her car. I parked a bit behind her and watched for over an hour. Just when I thought nothing would happen, a black pickup pulled into the driveway. Susan exited her car and walked toward the truck. I recognized the driver immediately. It was Gary Dawson, someone I hadn't seen in years. I felt a wave of confusion. Of all people, why did it have to be him? Susan approached Gary and began talking to him. I saw him shake his head multiple times. Then, Susan dropped to her knees. I couldn't believe it. She was pleading with him. He tried to leave, but she held on to him. In that moment, I saw his hand lift, and I jumped out of my car, running as fast as I could to close the distance between us. He never caused Susan harm, but someone came to the side door, called for him, and he turned away, leaving Susan standing in the driveway. She slowly walked back to her car, while I returned to mine. She sat there for about 10 minutes before starting her car and driving off. I followed her long enough to make sure she was going home, then headed back to the hospital. I sat with Alex, talking to him when he was awake, and just thinking when he slept. One thing was clear. He wasn't improving. When Susan arrived at the hospital, she looked terrible, as if she had been crying all evening and lost all hope. Even though I knew how she felt, I couldn't help but wrap my arms around her and reassure her that everything would be okay. I stayed with her for much of the night. We found comfort in each other's presence and discussed what to do next. I left the hospital around 3 a.m. and went home. That night I realized that whatever I decided could not happen while Alex was still in the hospital. In the daylight, away from the emotions of the night, I could think more clearly. I went up to the attic and looked through old photos we had. After a while, I found some from our younger days. Sure enough, there were photos of Gary. I also found a school picture of Alex and compared it to the others. They had the same eyes and similar nose shape. Alex had Susan's mouth, but a sharper chin. To my eyes, it seemed pretty clear. I also found a picture of Susan just before her first pregnancy. She was in a swimsuit, clearly from a holiday. Looking at the picture, I felt a warm feeling in my chest. She was lovely, not model-like, but someone you wanted to cherish and keep safe from life's troubles. I took the photos downstairs and scanned them for later. I sat down at my desk and called my brother Bob. He and his wife had a spare room, and I hoped to stay there for a while. I told him Susan and I were having a hard time and that I wanted to give her some space once Alex came home. He seemed to believe me and said he'd ask his wife, but he was sure she would agree. When I got to the hospital, both Alex and Susan looked much better. He had his first treatment and things were improving. She looked at me and said, "We need to talk. Want to grab a coffee?" I thought, this is it. She will finally tell me everything. But I was wrong. As we sipped our coffee, she began explaining dialysis and how once patients got settled, they could often do it at home. But it required a separate room. She wanted to know if I could give up my office for that. I felt let down. She was still avoiding the deeper conversation. "Sure, no problem," I said, knowing I would be gone by then. That evening went well. Alex seemed much happier. He was still hurt from his broken ribs and laughing caused him discomfort. But he was more like the son I remembered. He fell asleep by 10, so I pulled out my laptop and made a list of things to do. Set up a personal bank account, get a new phone, talk to my lawyer, move my things, and deal with Gary. Susan arrived late that night, around 1 a.m. She looked better than she had in a while and seemed to have gotten some rest. I returned home and finally slept soundly for the first time in 3 days. The phone woke me up at 9:30. It was my brother saying it was fine for me to stay with him and asking if he could help Susan and me with anything. I thanked him and asked if I could start moving my things over at 5. He agreed, and I let him get back to his day. By the end of the day, I'd set up a personal bank account and moved a portion of our joint funds into it. I had bought a new phone and started moving my contacts. I also arranged to meet with a lawyer the next day. When I got to my brother's house to unload, he seemed a bit surprised. "Wow, Harry, that seems like a lot of things for just a few days. Are you coming back?" "I'm not sure, Bob. I really don't know, but I need to work from here for a while, if that's all right." He said it was fine, so I headed to the hospital. Both Susan and Alex were doing well when I arrived and didn't mind that I was late. Alex was feeling better, and Susan decided to spend the night at home in our own bed. "Harry, when he falls asleep, come home. You really look worn out," she said. I got home around 11. Using her earlier suggestion, I went straight to bed and slept. The smell of bacon woke me up, and I found breakfast waiting for me. At the table, Susan was cheerful, lively, and excited. During breakfast, she told me that Alex would have dialysis today and again on Monday. If everything went well, he could come home and only go in 3 times a week until we got a machine for home. She thanked me for giving up my office, finished her coffee, and hurried off to the hospital. I got out my laptop and looked at my list again. I had 2 things left: meet with my lawyer and handle Gary. I was set for the first task, so I might as well start thinking about the other one. I wasn't sure if I could actually confront him. I had never wanted to harm anyone before, but I felt like my life had been turned upside down, and none of this would have happened without Gary Dawson. I wanted to hold Gary accountable for what he had done to my family. I had never harmed anyone before, but I remembered things I had seen in movies. So I drove to Gary's house. As I parked, I noticed his truck in the driveway. Suddenly, my calmness began to fade. He had caused distress for my wife and abandoned my son when he needed him most. He had to face the consequences, and I thought now was the right time. I got out of my car and walked to the front door. I rang the bell and the door opened quickly. What I saw took me by surprise. She was tall, had a nice figure, and was a brunette with blue eyes. She wore fitted blue jeans and a buttoned shirt. "Can I help you?" she asked. My feelings of frustration returned, and I insisted on seeing Gary. "Well, I'm sorry, but he's not here," she replied. Before I could respond, she looked at me again and said, "Wait, it's Harry, right? You are Harry Anderson? It's been a while, please come in." "I'm sorry. I don't know your name," I said. "I'm Sarah, Gary's wife." "Sarah, I didn't recognize you. The last time I saw you, you were much younger." "All grown up," she replied, spinning playfully. "What do you think?" "I think you look great," I said honestly. "Thank you. Take a seat. I'll make some coffee," she said. I sat on the couch feeling confused. I wanted to confront Gary, not burden this kind woman. Sarah returned with coffee, cream, sugar, and cookies. She sat across from me looking concerned. "Harry, did Gary do something troubling to you?" she asked. "Why do you ask that?" I replied. "When I opened the door, I saw a lot of emotion in your eyes. The Harry I knew was never like that. What brought you here?" "I came to have a conversation with him," I said simply. "Wow, you must really dislike him. What has he done?" she pressed. I decided to change the subject. "Why do you dislike him? Does he hurt you?" "He used to, but not anymore. My father stepped in when I had a bruise and sent someone to talk to Gary. He hasn't bothered me since." "That sounds serious." Sarah continued to ask, "What did he do to you?" Her eyes were gentle, full of care. I could no longer hold back my feelings. I began to cry and told her everything that had happened. She moved closer and comforted me, resting my head against her chest. When we weren't spending the night together, she could understand it. But I still felt really tired now. By 9:30 on Monday morning, I was ringing Sarah's doorbell. When the door opened, she reached out, took my shirt, and pulled me inside. After she shut the door, she leaned against it for a moment. "You're late," she said, then offered a quick smile. I wanted to mention my lateness, but she wasn't listening. She took my hand and led me to the kitchen. She wore tight jeans and a simple white t-shirt with a big smile on her face. "I have a plan," she said. "Coffee or something stronger?" I chose coffee, and she guided me back to the sofa. She brought in the coffee and sat down next to me. "Do you still want to get back at Gary?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe not as much as I did on Friday, but I still think he should pay for all the trouble he caused in my marriage." "Think about it, Harry. What is Gary most proud of? What did he always joke about?" "His charm with women. Like you, and now it seems Susan, too. So that's where we can strike. The second part is a bit tricky, but hitting at his pride will be easier than you think. But I need to ask you two things. First, to do this, we need to know each other better. Can you handle that, Harry?" Just one look at her as she moved closer made the answer clear. Yes, definitely. "Great," she said, reaching into her bag. "The second question is, do you know how to use one of these?" She pulled out a camera with a zoom microphone. "I can learn quickly," I replied. "Perfect," she said, holding my arm and getting even closer. "Harry, we're going to make a video starring us, showing all the things that Gary hasn't done for a long time. We could share it with his friends, and it would really hurt him." "Wait a minute. Aren't you thinking about the consequences? Think about how complicated this could become. Would you feel uncomfortable doing all that on camera? Isn't it difficult to have been married to him all these years? If it weren't for my dad saying the kids need a father, I would have left him long ago. Also, we don't have to share it. We could just threaten to. You know, for some leverage, you could help your son get what he needs." If I had been thinking clearly, I would have noticed the holes in her plan, but with that last sentence, she made me agree to it. "Okay, Harry, first we get to know each other better." She was about to end things with Gary when she found out she was going to have a baby. Back then, this was a big deal. Her father said she had to marry Gary. "You made your choice. Now you have to live with it," he told her. Gary wasn't very excited about the marriage, so her father made him a deal he couldn't ignore. Gary would get a job and wouldn't have to contribute financially to support her or their child. All he needed to do was be a good husband. But Gary didn't know how to embrace that role, and even while she was in the hospital having their baby, he was out having fun with his friends. I knew this because I still spent time with their group. Just 3 months after their baby was born, she found out she was pregnant again. This second pregnancy was tough for her, but Gary didn't care and expected her to meet his needs regardless of how she was feeling. She felt more like an object than a wife. She looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, Harry." "Why?" I asked. "I remember you don't like it when women talk like that, but I didn't know how else to say it." I was surprised she remembered that after so long. "You're right," I replied, "but please keep going." She told me that after her daughter was born, she discovered Gary had been seeing other women while she was unable to be close to him. That's when she decided to stand up for herself. At that time, everyone was talking about health issues, and she refused to let Gary put her at risk. She asked him to be more considerate, and that's what led to disagreements between them. After one of their arguments, she went to visit her mother. Her father noticed her bruised eye and simply asked, "Did he do that?" Her silence was telling enough. The next week, Gary had an accident at work that caused him some trouble. She realized that just mentioning talking to her father made Gary nervous. He even had a procedure done to prevent having more children, hoping she would agree to be with him without caution. It didn't change anything. When he said it was pointless to be cautious, she found herself agreeing with him there. Due to his job, he had to leave home for a week at a time. She talked about her relationships with other men and expected me to be shocked, but I wasn't. I didn't ask how many, but she said it was few. Most of them were married and wanted only something simple without any long-term commitment. I told her it was their loss, and I meant it. The more I got to know her, the more I saw she was a kind person who had faced many challenges. She truly cared for her children, Luke and Daisy, and they were part of the reason she stayed with Gary. Becoming pregnant at 18 meant she had no education or skills to get a job that could support them. Her father had made it clear that if she left, he wouldn't help them anymore. When she finished speaking, she looked at me. "Do you see how messy my life is, Harry?" I held her close, feeling the warmth of her against me. She seemed troubled as she played with my chest hair. "Why me?" I asked. "Why you what, Harry?" "You said that no one has been close to you in over 10 years. "That's right. But I didn't take precautions and you didn't ask me to, so why me?" "Because you are Harry Anderson." "Boring Harry Anderson," I said. She playfully slapped my chest, propped herself up on an elbow, and looked at me. "I've told you about self-pity, Harry. It's really unattractive in a man." "Okay," she continued, "because Harry Anderson has been completely loyal to his wife since they got married. There's no chance of any trouble. If you were ever to take responsibility, you would stand by me no matter what. If that makes you boring, then I'm happy to be bored. I just wish I had met you before I got into this situation. Now it's your turn, Harry." I was about to speak when I noticed she was moving closer. I felt a rush of excitement. She had rarely done this before and usually needed some encouragement. I realized that feelings were building up, so I told her that if we continued, it might take me a while to gather my thoughts. She looked me in the eye after I spoke. "So what do you want, Harry?" I thought for a moment and then said, "I want to be close to you again." She smiled brightly. "Oh yes, please, Harry, yes." Our second time together felt just as special as the first. Holding her and enjoying her presence filled me with warmth. When my finger touched her back, it sent a spark through me. It was early afternoon when we both needed a shower. We helped each other wash up. To my surprise, she suddenly kissed me again, and I felt a rush of emotions. Soon I knew it was time. Afterwards, she stood up and smiled with excitement. "Wow, Harry, you really surprised me today." "I am impressed." She smiled at me, and we shared a warm embrace as water sprayed over us. After we dried off and got dressed, we headed to the kitchen. Sarah asked what I wanted to eat. Remembering her fancy upbringing, I decided to stick to my roots and asked for a bacon sandwich. While we ate, I shared my story of growing up in a council estate, the son of a farm worker and a cleaner. I talked about my basic education and how I had to work to buy things like records and films. I did paper rounds and shelf stocking at the supermarket, anything to earn some spending money. My interest in science and maths made me a bit different from my friends. I mentioned moving to a technical college to study engineering, even though others laughed and thought I should find a regular job instead. When I went to university for electronics, they really reacted, saying I thought I was better than them. Still, I returned home during breaks and worked with old friends, the same people I had known all my life. After finishing my degree in electronics, I got a job with a local engineering company. Not long after, I met Susan, who was working as a social worker for children. I shared with her our struggles to have kids, my low sperm count, and our joy at the birth of Alex, followed by Maddie and Jacob. She listened and then asked, "So you were happy, Harry?" "Yes," I said, "but it wasn't completely fulfilling. For 14 years, I thought I was the important man in their lives. Now I find out Susan was with someone else. I thought she cared for me, but if she did, why did she act this way? It would have been kinder for her to leave as soon as she realized I couldn't give her children." She held my head close. "Wow, they really hurt you, didn't they, Harry?" Then she laughed softly. "What's so funny? Don't you see? They hurt you, and now you've come to me, so you're kind of equal." "Well, I'd need to be with you for the next 14 years to feel equal." She smiled brightly. That might just be possible, Harry. Before I left, she asked me to promise I would come back the next day. By the time we finished talking, it was time for her to pick up the kids from school, and I had to go to the hospital. I arrived at the hospital early and immediately noticed that Susan seemed much happier. She told me that Alex was doing well on dialysis and that they planned to send him home after his next session on Wednesday. I said that was great and encouraged her to stay home on Wednesday to get things ready for his return. I would sit with him and bring him home after his treatment. I also mentioned I needed to go to my clients on Thursday for a project presentation. This was not true, but I thought I could make it true. In fact, I wanted to see as little of her as possible before I left on Friday. Before she went out, Susan asked me not to stay late tonight. "I'll make us a nice dinner tonight, and we can eat around 8, she said. "You look really tired. I think you've been working too hard." I found Alex sitting in a chair in the ward watching TV. He told me it was just boring shows, but then started asking about my work. As we talked, he said to me, "Dad, you're really good with machines, aren't you?" I replied that I believed I was, and thankfully my clients agreed. "Don't you ever wish you could understand people the way you understand machines?" he asked. Wow, that's a deep question. Yes, sometimes I do wish that. What makes you ask? Something's up with Mom. When she's not busy with me, she just sits and stares. She thinks I don't see her, but I do, and it's really strange. "It's probably just hitting home how close we came to losing you," I said. I changed the subject and asked him what dialysis was like. "Incredibly boring. You have to sit there for hours with nothing to do while the machine works." By 7:30, I was on my way home. No matter how I felt about Susan, there were two things I couldn't complain about. She was a great cook and a wonderful mother. That night, she really outdid herself. The food was fantastic. We opened a bottle of wine, and when we sat on the sofa to watch TV, she became very warm and friendly. I thought this was because she felt guilty, and the more she tried to be close, the angrier I became. To hold my anger back, I told her she was right that I was tired and went to bed. In 17 years, I had rarely turned down Susan's affection, but I knew I had to this time. In my current mood, I would want to say something hurtful, and that was not something I could live with, so I pretended to be asleep. I woke up to find myself alone in bed, with the smell of bacon coming from the kitchen. I quickly showered and went down to find a full English breakfast waiting for me. This usually only happened on special occasions, so I had to ask what was going on. "My man needs some energy," she said with a warm smile. I started to feel guilty about what I was planning to do, but then I thought, if I've felt this way after just a few days of lying, how could she have done it for 14 years and not felt bad? After breakfast, I went straight to my office and made 2 calls. The first was to set up the presentation for my latest project, and the second was to the telecom company to forward all incoming calls on my office line to my new mobile phone. "Harry Anderson, you're so good for me." "I can't remember feeling like this before," she said. I gave her a playful nudge and reached for the remote. We lay there watching some videos, and she laughed every time I took notes. For each scene, I would ask her, "Have you tried that?" If she said no, I would follow up with, "Do you want to?" If she answered yes, I'd ask, "Do you like it?" By the time I was done, I had a list of what she liked and disliked, along with one, "Never done it but want to try." I showed her my notes, and she just laughed. My list included details like camera angles and setups. "I lie in bed with you watching videos, and instead of being excited, you're analyzing everything," she said. "Well, you want me to get it right, don't you?" I replied. She playfully nudged me again and sent me off to the shower. We enjoyed a cheerful moment together in the bathroom. After we dried off and got dressed, I explained my plan for Alex coming home and how I wanted Susan to have a nice day with him before I had to leave. I knew this would be hard for her, but I couldn't keep up the lie. I wasn't sure if things with her and Gary were still happening, and part of me was too scared to find out. Sarah listened carefully and then started counting the days. Since the kids would be home all weekend and Gary wouldn't leave until Tuesday morning, it would be a week before we could see each other again. 7 days, Harry. That's just too long, she said. It seems strange now, but until then, we hadn't exchanged phone numbers. We did that right before parting, promising to stay in touch. When I got to the hospital, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. 7 days too long. We'll think of something. See you soon. I smiled and thought, I bet she does. I was still smiling when I saw Susan. That's what I like to see. "My man with a smile on his face," she said. She wrapped her arms around me and gave me a gentle kiss. She looked happy and told me everything was okay and that we could take Alex home after his treatment the next day. She reminded me not to be late for dinner at 8, then left. It was great to see Alex looking well, and we talked cheerfully. He was still a bit worried about his mother, which made me feel guilty since I was about to complicate things. But I couldn't ignore what I had learned, and his parents' relationship would never be the same. I still believed that taking a break was the best option for everyone in the long run. That evening went fine. I said I had to work and went to bed quite late. The next day, I headed to the hospital while Susan tidied up the house and arranged for Maddie and Jacob to come home from her mother's. By mid-afternoon, Alex was ready to leave, and I drove him home to a warm welcome. He truly was the focus of everyone's attention, which suited me just fine. I had to finish my presentation for the next day. The presentation went well, and I was looking forward to getting paid for my work. It kept me busy all day, and I worked late into the night. Friday was an important day, and I took Alex to the hospital at 10:30 a.m., giving him my old phone to help pass the time. We got back home in the afternoon, and Susan was thinking about dinner. "What do you want for dinner tonight, Harry?" she asked. "I won't be having dinner tonight, Susan." "I'm leaving," I replied. She looked confused. "What do you mean you're leaving? Where are you going?" "I'm leaving you, Susan." There's a short note on my desk in the office along with my house keys. I took what I needed and hope to come back for the rest when I find a new place. Let's share taking Alex for his appointments, and I can take him every other weekend if that works for you. "I'll be in touch," I said as I walked toward the door. It took her a moment to understand what I said, then she hurried to my office to find my note. It was more like a picture than a letter. I used photos I found in the attic, and it said Susan Gary Alex with the question, "When were you going to tell me?" I heard her cry out as I left the house. As I backed out of the driveway, she ran outside. She reached my car window with tears in her eyes and pleaded, "Harry, don't do this. We need to talk." As I reached the road, I rolled down the window. "Susan, we should have talked about this a long time ago. Don't you think it's too late now?" I drove away. I didn't realize how quickly people take sides in a breakup. Everyone I knew loved Susan, including my family. When I arrived at my brother's house, his wife Wendy came out to meet me. She told me I wasn't being completely honest with Bob and that my mother had called asking about me. She told her I wasn't there, which was true at that moment. "We won't lie for you, Harry. You know you care about Susan. No matter what happened, you both should try to work things out." I asked if that meant I couldn't stay there, and she softened a bit. "Not for long. You're Bob's brother and we care about you, but we don't want to get caught in the middle." I told her I would find a place to stay the following week and went up to the spare room to work. Later that evening, I got a text from Sarah. It said, "7 days is too long. See you tomorrow for dinner at the Palm at 7:30. Be there." I replied, looking forward to it. I also received several emails from Susan. The first one said, "Harry, I love you and only you. Please come home so we can talk." Then she sent another email. "Harry, it's not what you think. Please call me." I replied to that with just one simple question. "Can you assure me that I am the father of our children?" Her reply spoke volumes. "Please, Harry, come home and let's discuss this. Do it for my sake or for the children's. We all love you and want you back." I replied briefly, "I take that as a no. I'm now blocking your emails, so anything you send will be ignored." I also got a message from Alex asking what was happening. I could only tell him to speak to his mother and that I would pick him up on Tuesday for his appointment. The next day, I spent time looking at places to live. It was tough. My business was doing well, but getting another place would really cut into my budget, which would hurt my savings for the kids' education. I had a nice evening to look forward to, though, and by 7:30, I was sitting at the bar of the Palm restaurant waiting for my date. The Palm was known as the best restaurant in town, and I felt a bit underdressed. I wore a linen jacket, chinos, and an open-neck shirt, while most men were in formal attire. Sarah added to my nerves when she arrived in a stylish evening gown with a lovely wrap over her shoulders. When she came in and handed her wrap to someone, I felt a tightness in my throat and struggled to speak. She walked up to me and greeted me warmly. "Harry, darling, have you been waiting long?" "Only 10 minutes," I said, not entirely truthfully. "Would you like a drink before dinner?" We decided on kheer, and I ordered while she chatted with the maitre d' with whom she seemed quite familiar. "Our table will be ready in 10 minutes," she said as she joined me. She mentioned that her mother was watching the children at home, noting they were too old for babysitting. "So, Harry, was it really that bad?" I shared with her what happened the day before, and as we spoke, we were called to our table. Once seated, I continued explaining everything, including the emails. "How do you feel now, Harry?" I admitted I wasn't proud of myself. I felt I had hurt Susan deeply, but didn't see a way to leave without causing pain. Still, I felt quite cruel. "But you're hurting too, Harry. I understand that." I told her how Wendy didn't want me to stay and how my mother was trying to reach me to suggest I go back. I felt somewhat alone. I feared if my family knew my true reasons for leaving, they would turn on Susan and that my mother might even cut ties with my children. I didn't want that. What if someone told the kids? No, it was better if I remained the bad guy in this story. I knew I still cared about her, but trust was a different matter. Now and then, people came by taking orders or bringing food and drinks. Occasionally, she would reach over and hold my hand. Talking to her made me feel better. When we ordered dessert, I noticed her looking at me closely. I asked if something was wrong. She simply asked, "How old are you, Harry? 44? 45? 9 and 30, I said, a bit annoyed. "I bet you've had that haircut since school. You should change those glasses, too. You're going to be my project, Harry. I'm going to make you look like you're 35. "Like you?" I replied. She laughed. "Yes, just like me." She kept describing how she would help me improve my look until our drinks arrived. "What's your biggest concern right now, Harry? A place to stay?" "Yes, that's my biggest worry. And it needs to be affordable. A spot where you can work and have the kids over, right?" "Exactly," I agreed. As she pulled out her phone, a waiter approached her and said she couldn't use it in the restaurant. She would need to go to the bar. She left for a moment and returned smiling. "I found a 4-bedroom house just outside of town. You'll pay for utilities and council tax, take care of the house and garden, and you can stay there for 6 months with Charlotte's approval. We'll meet Charlotte on Monday at 10. Oh, and Gary is leaving for Turkey a day early so we can meet then." I signaled for the bill, but the waiter told me it was all covered. Sarah laughed. "Daddy's treat, but he doesn't know it." I smiled and got her coat from the cloakroom. "What now, Harry?" she asked. I thought she might need to go home, but it seemed she was staying the night. "I hope you're not planning to drive after all that wine and brandy," I said. "No, I've booked a room at the Travelodge nearby." "You have a room, Harry? Then let's go." From my hotel room, she called a taxi around 1:30 in the morning and left me to relax. The next morning, I returned to Bob's house. I told Wendy I wouldn't be there long, and she looked a bit awkward but understood. Once in the spare room, it was time to work, so I pulled out my laptop. It was tough to focus with so much on my mind. Then I got an email from Alex. "On dialysis, super bored. I need to talk, Dad." I replied, "Is Mom there?" Shortly, he wrote back, "No, she's busy with Maddie and Jacob." I closed my laptop and headed to the hospital. Once I arrived, I realized I had been fooling myself thinking I could manage things without any issues. In a breakup, everyone gets hurt, and Alex was feeling the impact deeply. He was very confrontational right from the beginning. "Why did you leave us, Dad?" He knew exactly what to say to hurt. I tried to explain that I hadn't left them, just their mother, and that as soon as I found a place to stay, they could come visit any time. "But why can't you live with us? It's what we all want. Even Mom." "Right now, son, I can't live in the same house as your mother. I can't share the details. That's for your mother to explain." I was trying to stay calm, but I could see that he was confused. "Mom doesn't tell us anything. She just cries. She said it was her fault and that she did something terrible." I thought Susan didn't want them to blame me, but I couldn't tell him the truth without hurting him. What a mess this was. Alex pressed me again. "So what can't be forgiven, Dad? You always said everyone deserves a second chance. Doesn't that include Mom?" That hit hard. I felt tears welling up. "I'm sorry, Alex," I said through my tears. "I can't talk about this now, and until I can't speak with your mother. I'm really sorry, son." I stood up and left. I tried to focus on a new work project, but my mind was scattered. Memories swirled around, Gary and Susan together, laughing, and Alex in pain. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I woke up the next day still in my clothes, just lying on the bed. My stomach reminded me that I hadn't eaten the day before. I texted Sarah, "Can I buy you breakfast?" Then headed to the bathroom for a shower. Afterward, I found a reply from Sarah. "Come to mine. I'll make you breakfast." I felt a bit anxious about her text. I wasn't sure I was ready for anything more than friendship right now, but I got in the car and drove over. When I arrived at Sarah's, I was pleasantly surprised to see her dressed in jeans, a t-shirt, and sandals, with her hair tied back. Then I remembered we were going to see Charlotte this morning. She had me sit at the kitchen table, poured me some orange juice, and mentioned I would have to wait a few minutes for the eggs. Soon I enjoyed a breakfast that was much better than anything I could have bought. "I bet you haven't been eating well. You need to take care of yourself, Harry," she said. After breakfast, we went to check out the house. Charlotte was a nice girl. She had a bit of a curvy shape, short hair, and a pretty face. I could picture her riding horses. She asked me a lot of questions about my background, my job, whether I had pets, etc. It turned out that as a single professional, I met most of the requirements, and with Sarah's recommendation, I didn't need to provide references. The house, she told me, belonged to a person who worked in the diplomatic service. They had been sent abroad and took their whole family with them. It was fully furnished, and I was responsible for keeping it in the same condition until they returned. The owners would be gone for at least 6 months, and if it was longer, they would decide what to do with the place. I would pay all the utility bills and fix anything that got damaged. There was a small amount of money set aside for repairs that I didn't cause. No pets were allowed in the house, and Sarah looked a bit sad when she heard that. The house was nice, located in a wooded area at the edge of town. It had 4 bedrooms, 2 of which had private bathrooms, and a double garage. Inside the garage were a Jeep and a sports car, but I was told not to use either of them. After that, Charlotte handed me the keys, hugged Sarah warmly, and left. "Do you like it?" Sarah asked. "Like it? This feels like a luxury for me. How do you know these people?" I replied. "Oh, I don't know the owners, but Charlotte is a friend from school. She was asked to find someone to look after the house. Just because my dad wants me to marry a truck driver doesn't mean I have to live that way. You would do well in my life, Harry. It would help your business." She looked at me thoughtfully and asked, "Are you still hungry?" After I drove her home, I went back to Bob's house to begin packing up. While I was loading the car, Wendy returned from picking up the kids and looked at me a bit awkwardly. "Harry, there really wasn't any rush. I didn't mean to push you out." "I know, Wendy, but I didn't think about how this would affect you and others. I don't want you lying for me. It's lies that got me into this situation." "What happened, Harry?" she asked, as I expected. "I think you should ask Susan that. I don't want to share anything she wouldn't want you to know." This response was becoming my go-to. "It sounds like you still care about her. Can't you just go back and fix things?" Of course I still care about her. That's what makes it so hard. If I didn't like her, it would be easier. I could share only what I wanted without worrying if it hurt her. But every time she gets hurt, I feel it too. If my marriage was a machine, I could just replace the broken part. Relationships aren't like that. Change one small thing and it all can fall apart. "Where are you going?" Wendy asked. "It's better if you don't know. That way, if my mom or Susan calls you, you won't have to lie. I'll be local, so I'll still see you around." "Thanks for having me, Wendy." "No hard feelings, Harry," she replied, wiping a tear from her face. "No hard feelings, Wendy," I said, hugging her briefly before I got into my car and drove away. The new house had a small office with a phone and internet. By that evening, I had everything set up and was ready to start working again. It wasn't until I thought about sleeping that I realized I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Unfortunately, the cupboards were empty, so I would have to wait until tomorrow. The next day at 10, I went to my house to pick up Alex for his dialysis appointment. I rang the doorbell and Susan answered. She looked worse than I felt. Her eyes were red, she wasn't wearing any makeup, and she was in comfortable clothes. I had been worried about this, but Susan was holding it together. She greeted me with a smile. "Really, Harry, you shouldn't be knocking on your own door. Take your keys back," she insisted, then asked Alex to get my keys. When she gave them to me, I thanked her. Well, I'll keep them for now. I found a place to stay for a bit, and I'll need to come back to pick up a few things. I thought maybe Thursday when you take Alex to dialysis. Her smile faded when I mentioned my new living arrangement. She held onto my hand as she placed the keys in it. We need to talk, Harry. Things aren't what they seem. So you haven't been hiding things from me all these years? Because it feels that way, I said. What I did was wrong, I know, but please give me a chance to explain. She spoke softly, trying not to let Alex overhear. I appreciated her effort to keep things calm for the children. Are you telling me, Susan, that in 14 years there was never a chance to explain? She released my hand and rushed back into the living room, visibly upset. Nice one, Dad, Alex said as he came out to me. Do you know how long she spent getting ready for that conversation? Maybe you shouldn't come back just yet. I drove him to the hospital in silence, accompanying him to the dialysis room and watching them prepare him for treatment. He looked at me as the machine started working. Dad, if I ask you a direct question, will you give me a direct answer? As long as there's an answer, son, yes. Does what's going on between you and Mom have anything to do with my accident? Before that, things seemed fine, and then everything changed while I was in the hospital. To answer straight, no. The only thing is that while you were in the hospital, I discovered things I didn't know before. But it was going to come out eventually. None of you kids are to blame for any of this. It's us, the so-called adults, who have really messed things up. He told me I should go and leave him to it, so I did, promising to be back by 2:30 to pick him up. I needed to shop for food and wanted to see Sarah for a bit. At 2:30, I picked him up and took him home. I said I wouldn't come inside this time. Before he got out of the car, he put his hand on my shoulder. Dad, when you come back for your things, please don't leave your keys behind. Why not? Doesn't your mom want me to come and go? Because while you still have your keys, Mom can think you're coming back, he said. You are coming back one day, right? When did he get so wise? I watched him until the door closed behind him. I went back home determined to get some work done. My stomach reminded me that I hadn't eaten all day, but somehow it didn't feel important. By the time I realized I was hungry, I just didn't want to cook. My relationship with Sarah grew, and she started visiting the house more often. If it weren't for her and having the kids over every other weekend, I might have really struggled. I was only getting about 4 hours of sleep at night, so I began working in the early hours. At first, none of this worried me since it helped me keep up with my projects, but soon I started to lose weight. Sarah was the first to notice. She spent more time with me than anyone else and began asking about my eating and sleeping habits. I didn't think much of it since I could afford to lose a little weight, but Sarah viewed it as a bigger issue. She signed me up at the same gym she went to and worked on getting me back into shape. I never enjoyed the gym much, but it was better going with someone, especially since it let me spend more time with Sarah. We bought a couple of bikes and often rode out to local parks and forests. Gradually, my appetite returned, and I was so tired that I slept right through my alarm in the morning. I was slimmer and felt stronger. Sarah appreciated the changes and wanted to help me with my look, but I reminded her that we had a project to finish. We still needed to film some important scenes. I was okay skipping those since everything I read said they could be uncomfortable at first. Sarah insisted it was something Gary had always wanted. We were both new to it, but we wanted the video to look like we knew what we were doing. We knew we needed some practice. Our first try did not go well. Despite using plenty of lotion, it was too uncomfortable for her, and I lost all motivation and had to stop. The next time I decided to take things slow. I started with just one finger, then 2, and eventually 3. She let out a quick yelp, and soon I was in. As I got deeper, I felt a strong grip around me. It was still uncomfortable for her, but she didn't give up. After several tries, she began to enjoy it. By the time we finished shooting, it had become a regular part of our sessions at her place. However, it was during one of these moments that I lost my excitement for the video. Gary had made good time driving through France. He reached Calais 2 hours early, and instead of waiting, he managed to catch an earlier ferry. Sarah and I were still in bed when he got home. He must have heard us because as I was with Sarah, she was quite loud. When he opened the door and saw us, his eyes widened in shock. What on earth is happening? Sarah looked at him and said, Harry is with me. Can we have some privacy, please? In those few seconds before he closed the door, I saw his expression shift from surprise to concern and then to a sort of reluctant acceptance. I could see his confidence fade. Sarah encouraged me, and when she reached her peak, we both collapsed. I couldn't shake off the image of Gary, and in that moment, I realized I didn't want to hurt him anymore. With filming done, Sarah was ready to help me change Harry Anderson's look. The first thing was my hairstyle. The one I had since school needed an upgrade. I left the salon with much shorter hair and some tips on how to keep the style. Next, she took me to an optician, and we tried on nearly every frame in the store. She picked out her favorites and asked the assistant which ones suited me best. They agreed on a pair. "To be honest," the assistant mentioned, "I think he looks best without any at all." So I switched to contact lenses. Sarah's next mission was to update my wardrobe. She went through my clothes and sorted them into 3 piles: donate, toss, and keep. The keep pile was the smallest. With Sarah's advice, I ordered a couple of tailored suits, then we went searching for casual clothes. I managed to insist on shopping at regular stores. The transformation was almost done when, during one of our outings, I nearly bumped into my sister-in-law, Wendy. "Hi, Wendy," I said. She stopped and turned to look at me. "Harry," she said, surprised. "I can't believe it's you. You look so different." We chatted for a bit, and I introduced Sarah as an old friend. "Not that old," Sarah joked, and we all laughed. I promised Wendy that I would bring the kids over to visit soon. It had been nearly 2 months since I had left Susan, and I had the kids every other weekend. We hadn't talked about our situation yet. We always tried to keep things normal in front of the children. Then I made a mistake. The kids loved the house I was living in. They enjoyed playing in the big garden and liked that it was near parks and forests. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to introduce them to Sarah, but I did. I invited her over one Saturday afternoon. When she arrived, I introduced her as an old friend and mentioned that she helped me find this nice place. Jacob and Maddie were friendly, but Alex seemed a bit distant. The following Thursday, when I went to pick up Alex for his appointment, he didn't come running out like usual. I waited for a bit, then rang the doorbell. Susan answered, looking embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Harry. I couldn't reach you to let you know." Alex arranged for transportation from the hospital. "He left around 9 this morning. He did this himself," she said, her eyes filled with tears. I put my arm around her shoulders. "Susan, I know you would never do anything to hurt me on purpose." "That's a start, right?" she replied. "Yes, it is," I said, and I left feeling heavy once again. After that, Alex stopped coming to the house and cut off all communication. It hurt, and in the following weeks I found myself parking a little way down the street just to watch the transport pick him up. It only took a few minutes, but it helped me see how he and his mother were doing. Sarah tried to comfort me and said he would come around, but I knew better. I felt like I had lost my oldest son, and I knew that as time passed, the others might follow him. Feeling like I had little left to lose, I went to a lawyer and asked him to file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Soon after, Sarah's children went on a school trip for 10 days. I had been looking forward to spending more time with her, but the first night she suggested we go out for dinner. I took her to a nice country pub we liked. She said she wanted to talk, and I was ready for a difficult conversation, the kind that begins with, "It's been nice, but..." What I faced was unexpected. We had just finished dessert when she finally spoke about her feelings. Then she shared something significant. "I've never told any man this, but I love you, Harry Anderson." I tried to speak, but she held up her hand. "Please, let me finish, Harry. I love you, and I think we can be happy together. I understand you still care for Susan, and I can accept that. But I can't bear the thought of you being unhappy. You are a good man, Harry, and you deserve joy." "But I'm happy." "No, you're not, Harry. If you were, you wouldn't spend your mornings in your car, trying to catch a glimpse of your son. When we're alone, you often seem lost in thought. Where do you go, Harry?" She didn't wait for my response. "If I'm with you, I need to know you won't go back to Susan. I can accept that you care for her, but I need to be sure that you can let go of that part of your life." "I've asked for a divorce. Isn't that enough?" "Not really, Harry. You haven't even talked to her about it. Anderson to the testing area. Let's see if we can get a match for his son." I felt a mix of relief and anxiety as I was led away. The testing process felt like it took forever, and every moment was filled with uncertainty. I kept thinking about Alex, about how brave he was, lying there while his mother sat by his side, hoping for a miracle. After the tests, I waited impatiently for the results. The weight of the situation was more than I could bear. I could only imagine what Susan was feeling, surrounded by the quiet tension of the hospital room, trying to comfort her son. As I sat there, I thought about our conversation and how important it was for us to communicate, to support each other through this difficult time. It was one of those moments that brought clarity. I knew that whatever happened next, I wanted to be there for both Susan and Alex. When the doctor finally returned, the look on his face told me it was time for answers. Anderson for a tissue test. The paperwork should be ready when you arrive. Make sure to gather the correct contact details. Then he added, "Remember, Mr. Anderson, the chances are like winning the lottery." I returned home around 2 in the afternoon to find Sarah waiting for me. She greeted me warmly, and we went inside together. "You look upset, Harry. What happened? Have you talked to Susan?" I shared my morning with her, and she hugged me tightly. I apologized for not speaking to Susan, mentioning that I thought she had enough to deal with right now. Sarah agreed and got up to make us lunch. I didn't have much appetite, but I sat at the table just to enjoy her company. As we ate, we talked, and she asked what I remembered about our conversation at the pub the night before. "I remember you saying you love me." "No, you said you are in love with me." "It took me a long time to realize that. You see, this has never happened to me before. Picture this, Harry. A 35-year-old woman who has never fallen in love. I never said I loved you, did I? That was wrong of me because I do. The issue is that you were correct. I do have feelings for Susan, but love alone is not enough for a marriage. It also requires trust, and right now I'm not sure I can trust Susan again. Once Alex is safe, I will talk to her." That afternoon, we rode our bikes to the forest and explored the trails for a few hours. When we got back, I cooked us dinner. I was about to pour us some wine, but then paused. "Better not. You should get home before it gets too late." "Can I stay the night, Harry? Just this once, I want to know what it feels like to wake up next to the man I care about." I poured the wine. I lost track of how many times we shared quiet moments that night. It seemed to happen whenever one of us stirred. I felt a little silly and happy with just a small amount of wine. When I woke up alone, I thought it might have all been a dream until I heard singing from downstairs. I quickly put on a robe and went to the kitchen. There, in a simple apron, was the wonderful person who had shared my bed. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said with a smile. "I was just about to start cooking breakfast. Help yourself to some coffee." I poured us both coffee and stared at her, feeling grateful. Just then the phone rang. Still lost in my thoughts, I walked over and answered it. "Hello, Harry Anderson." "Hello, Mr. Anderson. This is the renal unit at Bronston General Hospital. We'd like you to come in to discuss the results of your test." "Okay, sure," I replied. "I'm about to have breakfast, so I can be there in about an hour." "We would really prefer if you could come in sooner, Mr. Anderson." "All right, then I'll make it half an hour." "I'm sorry, babe," I called out to Sarah. "The hospital wants me to skip breakfast." "You should go," she said. "And Harry, I'll be here when you get back." True to her word, Sarah stayed with me until late. The nurses were particularly attentive, as if they thought that live donors were something special. The day after my surgery, Sarah brought my laptop as I had asked. Though she wouldn't let me work, I spent my time editing a video we had made together, and we laughed as I showed her clips. The next day, around 10:30, I had not received any visitors. I finished the video and made a DVD. One of the nurses helped me by sneaking in an envelope. I put the disc inside, addressed it, and asked her to send it for me. Half an hour later, the door opened and a voice called out, "Harry Anderson." Susan rushed into the room and embraced me warmly. After a moment, she held on tightly. "How is he?" I asked. "He's doing well, looking better every hour. Just wait until I tell him he has his dad's kidney." "I'd rather you didn't mention that. I don't want him to feel like he owes me anything. That's why I asked them not to tell you. How did you find me?" Her eyes glistened with tears as she explained. "At first, I didn't know it was you. I thought Gary had changed his mind. I asked the hospital where I could find him, but they said he wasn't there. I thought maybe he had gone home. I found his number and called. When I spoke to his wife, she laughed and told me he was in Turkey for 3 days. I felt so lost, and then she suddenly asked if I was Susan. When I said yes, she went on about how her husband would never donate a kidney, but that you would. I called the hospital again, gave them your name, and they helped me find you. "Oh, Harry, I've missed you," she said. I hugged her as she began to cry. Once she calmed down, she pulled away and dried her eyes with a tissue. Now that we're alone, we need to talk. I agreed that we had a lot to sort out, especially since Alex was back in the hospital. "Let's start with this," she said, taking an envelope from her bag. She pulled out a letter and read it to me. It was a notice for a divorce, on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. I expected this. I thought it would mention other reasons, too. "I know that's what you think, but I would never do that to you. Harry, I've made mistakes and lied to you. My last lie almost cost us our son, but I've never been unfaithful. You're the only man I've ever wanted." "I suppose the kids just appeared out of nowhere then. Why didn't anyone tell me?" She began to cry again, and then her frustration showed. "Do you want to know who fathered my children? I'll show you." She rummaged through her bag and pulled out a plastic tube with a bulb on the end. "Here! It was this. This is how I got pregnant." A nurse walked by, and I quietly let her know that we were fine. I apologized and promised to listen while she shared her story. The last part had him rushing to the door. I kept some of Gary's contributions in the fridge, and on my most fertile day, we came together as we always did. Afterwards, as you drifted off to sleep, I went to the bathroom, lay in the bath, and used a tool to help with my situation. When I found out I was pregnant, I felt unsure about what to do. But you seemed so happy, and there was a chance it could be your child, Harry. I wanted him to be yours so badly that I convinced myself he was. When Alex had his accident, and they mentioned needing donors from family, I realized that if neither of us matched, you might start to have doubts. So, I made up a story about a previous marriage to prevent them from testing you. I'm sorry, Harry. I wanted him to be your child, but when it really mattered, I knew the chances were slim. I even went to see Gary to ask him to come in for a test, but he refused. Tears started to flow again. I fell to my knees and pleaded with him, Harry, asking for his support. "I know you did. I saw you." She buried her head in the bed as she cried. I reached out and gently stroked her hair until she calmed down enough to look at me. "So assuming I believe all this, it only explains Alex. What about Maddie and Jacob? Surely Gary wouldn't fall for that again, let alone a third time." I paid him £100 each time, or to look at it another way, £100 per child. He insisted on specific clothes, saying it helped him, but I ended up with 2 lovely children. She looked into my eyes. "I always wanted them to be yours, Harry. They say a woman looks for lies in your eyes, but a man listens for untruths in your voice." I was starting to believe her story. After all, who would make something like that up? He had a procedure to prevent more children. Yes, I know. He called just before it happened and asked if I wanted another child before he made that decision. He wanted £500. I told him we had enough family as it was. I was in shock, unsure of what to do. If this was true, and I believed it was, then I had broken our vows, and now I had to make a decision that could hurt someone I love. Well, that's everything. I know what I did was wrong and that it hurt you deeply. I love you, Harry, and if you think you could forgive me enough to come back to us, it would make me and our children very happy. We've missed you, and I certainly have missed having you around. I know this is all my fault, so if you don't want to come back, I will understand. I sat there with my head in my hands, feeling overwhelmed. Eventually, I took my hands away and looked at her. Tears had ruined her makeup, making her look so vulnerable and helpless. I didn't know what to say. "Susan," I began, "I might be the only person in the world who believes your story, and it's only because I know you well. But I still can't grasp why you chose to be with Gary. We had talked about alternative options, and I would have loved to help you have a child." "I know, Harry, but it had already happened by then. I almost told you right away, but you said it needed to be someone we didn't know so we wouldn't have to worry about claims on our child." "This is such a mess," I replied. "First, I need to tell you, Susan, that while you may not have been unfaithful, I have been—" "With your old friend, Sarah?" She stressed the word old. Wendy says she can't be much more than 25. "Yes, it's with Sarah. She's 35 and Gary's wife." I pushed you into it, Harry. You wouldn't have done that if I hadn't lied to you. Still, it's done now, and it's much more complex. There are other people involved. Is she as beautiful as Wendy says? I don't know exactly what Wendy told you, but yes, she probably is. And do you love her, Harry? Yes, I do, I admitted, unable to meet her eyes. Does she love you? Yes, she does. I think she was going to ask me to move in with her when the hospital called. I shared how I had planned to confront Gary out of anger. I talked about my struggles and how Susan had helped me through tough times, including our video meant to be a joke for Gary. Oh, Harry, how can you make her sound so good? Do what? Here's a woman trying to take my husband, and I should resent her, but after hearing you, I feel like I should thank her for being there for you. She's not trying to take me away. She knows I still love you, and she mentioned that I should come talk to you to see if there's a way to bring us back together. That's probably why she's not here now. But you said she wanted to move in with you, Susan said, looking confused. I think she wants to see if I'm free when things settle down. And are you still free, Harry? I really don't know, Susan, I replied, feeling remorseful. Well, she said, glancing at the divorce papers, you'd better decide quickly. They don't wait around. As she reached the door, she turned back to me. Harry, do you know the chances of a non-relative being a perfect match? More chance of winning the lottery. We could get a paternity test done. No, he's my son. I changed his diaper. I helped you feed him. I'm the only dad he's ever known. I'm the one who taught him how to ride a bike. What difference does it make whose genes he has? He's my son, and nothing can change that. She smiled and closed the door. That afternoon, they took out the drain from my wound. I got up, dressed, left a note for Sarah, and went to find Alex. I found him and Susan in the same room as before. He was sitting up and looking better than I had seen him in months. When I walked in, his face changed, and he looked at his mother, who smiled back at me. How are you feeling, Harry? She asked. I'm fine, I replied, then turned to Alex. How about you, young man? Okay, I guess, he said. They found me a donor, and I had a transplant the day before yesterday. I walked closer to the bed and shook his hand. I thought he might pull away, but he didn't. I'm sorry it took me so long to come, I said. I hurt my back and couldn't get out of bed for a few days. Susan smiled at me, reached across the bed and squeezed my hand. What's going on here? Alex asked. Did you two make up or something? Not exactly, his mother said, but we talked and cleared things up between us. Yeah, I laughed. She caught me at a tough moment. My ears are still ringing. Alex grinned. No jokes, Dad. It hurts to laugh. We've started to talk more openly, I told him. Do you have your phone with you? Susan got the phone from his locker, and I entered my new mobile number. That's my new phone number, I said. Please share it with your mom and siblings. You can reach me at that number or call my old office number, I added. Susan looked surprised. You mean all this time I could have called your office number to reach you? Yeah, of course, I said. I still had to work, you know. Susan and Alex started to laugh, but Alex quickly stopped when his stitches hurt. I stayed for a while and reminded him to be more careful and that he would need to keep taking his medication. Don't worry, Dad. I know this is my second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, right? Yes, I replied, pretending not to catch his hint. But not everyone gets a third. As I was leaving, Susan stood up and came to the door. She took my hand and said, Thank you, Harry. Then she surprised me by leaning closer and whispering, I care about you. I placed my other hand on hers and said, One step at a time, Susan. One step at a time. When I returned to the ward, I found Sarah waiting for me at the nurse's station. She took my arm and led me back to my room. Come on, she said. You're supposed to be a patient, not a visitor. Once we were back in my room, she asked, So, how is he, Harry? I told her how good Alex looked and that we had a nice conversation. Did Susan come to see you? She asked. Yes, she did, I said. But who told her I was here? Ah, that would be me, I guess. Sorry, Harry. I just couldn't stand the thought of Gary getting all the credit for Alex's recovery. Sarah told me that the nurses expected me to leave the next day and promised she would be there to pick me up. The next day I was indeed discharged, but only if someone could be at home with me. I told them there was. I called Sarah and asked her to delay picking me up so I could see Alex again. He looked great, and I had obviously arrived before Susan. It didn't take long for him to get straight to the point. "You and Mom were getting along well yesterday," he said. "Does that mean you are coming home soon?" "It's too early to say," I told him. "There's a lot to work through first." "Still, we are talking now, so that's a start, isn't it?" he replied. "Yeah, I suppose," I said. "Anyway," I continued, "I will come over to see you, and you're always welcome at my house." "Will she be there?" he asked. "If by she you mean Sarah, then yes, she may be there sometimes," I told him. "In that case, I would rather not," he said. "Now listen, Alex," I said, trying not to show my annoyance. "Sarah is not the reason I left your mother." "No," he said, "but she might be the reason you don't come back." I decided to change the subject and talked about how he was feeling better and how he planned to catch up on schoolwork. Just as I was about to leave, Susan arrived. "Don't leave on my account, Harry," she said. "I'm not," I replied. "I have someone coming to pick me up, and I don't want to keep them waiting." She chose to walk out with me. As we walked, we chatted about how I was doing and about Jacob and Maddie. She guessed who was coming to collect me, and as we got closer to the entrance, we could see her through the glass. "Tell me that's not the little mouse that was Sarah," she said. I laughed. "Sorry, no can do. Are you going to come out to meet her?" "Really, Harry, I don't think that's a good idea, do you?" I left her there and went out to meet Sarah. "Hi, Harry," she said before giving me a friendly smile. "I borrowed this," she said, pointing to a black Audi 4X4. "I thought it would be easier for you to get in and out considering your condition." For the next week, she helped me as much as she could. The hardest part for me was that she wanted to be careful until I healed completely. That happened about 12 days after the surgery when I went to the outpatient department at the local hospital. "Hey, what time should I come over?" I asked. "If you could be here around 4, that would be great," Susan replied. "Oh, I might be there a bit earlier," I said. "That's fine, Harry. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye." I said goodbye and hung up. At that moment, I realized how chaotic things had become. I looked down and felt a rush of mixed emotions. "You are quite the troublemaker," I joked. "Are you going to scold me, sir?" she said with a grin. We spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the ups and downs of our situation until she left for the day. When I got to the party, I immediately felt out of place. My mom was there with Susan's parents, my brother Bob and his wife Wendy, basically everyone who wanted to know what was going on in my life. Susan looked thrilled to see me and greeted me with a friendly wave. Jacob and Maddie ran over to hug me, and even Alex came out to say hi. We were surrounded by friends and neighbors. Susan really went all out. She made a ton of food and even had a case of my favorite beer. She brought me a drink, and I tried to stay close to my friends instead of family. "Are you going to avoid your mom all night?" she teased. Just then, my mom found me. "I can't believe you've been ignoring me," she said. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know I haven't been around much lately. Honestly, I've been trying to avoid the lecture I'm sure is coming. If you mean that I'm going to tell you to stop acting like a spoiled child, then you're right," she replied. My mother believed that Susan was perfect for me, and for years I would have agreed. But now I couldn't explain my doubts without causing more turmoil. If she heard the truth, she would want answers about things I wasn't ready to share. "What does this new person have that makes you leave your wife and kids?" she questioned. "This new person is connected to my issues with Susan, not the reason for them. If it weren't for her help, I might be in a much worse situation right now. If anyone should be blamed, it's me or Susan, not her. But you're jumping to conclusions without knowing everything." "What else can I do when no one tells me anything? You keep quiet, and Susan just says it's all her fault." "Maybe no one is sharing anything because honestly, Mom, it's not really your concern." "My son walks out on his wife and kids," she raised her voice, "and he tells me it's none of my business." "Wow." Susan came over to help me. "She means well," she said as she guided me back towards the kids. "I know," I replied. "Everyone thinks I'm not a good person because I won't share why we have these problems. If I don't say anything, they can't see it's not my fault. But if I do tell them, it could really hurt the kids. Susan, this is so hard for me. I wish I hadn't come." I took another drink and took the kids outside to the garden. Alex, who had seen and heard everything, even gave me a kind look. I sat outside with them for a while, talking about school and their friends. Maddie even asked about Sarah. Bob and Wendy came out to chat with me. Well, Bob said, Wendy told me you've changed, but if she hadn't said so, I wouldn't have recognized you. What happened to my nerdy brother? He met a woman who saw more than just a nerd in him, I replied. She really did a wonderful job, Bob said, then continued a bit awkwardly. You're right about what you told Mom. It's not our business. But you have to see Harry. We just want to help. We can't do that if we don't know what's going on. I know that, I said. I really wish I could tell people, just to stop them thinking I'm the bad guy. But if I say anything, it would change everything forever, and I can't let that happen. I'd rather stay quiet. He smiled and simply said, You know where we are, Harry. Don't be a stranger. Sometimes it surprises me where support comes from. Susan's mother, Elaine, has never thought I was good enough for her daughter. She wanted Susan to marry someone who was climbing the career ladder, like the man running the child protection unit now. It didn't matter that I earned twice as much as that person. To her, I was just an engineer and didn't deserve her daughter. John, who was Susan's stepfather after her father died young, came over and sat across from me in the garden. She's not a bad woman, you know, Harry. A little weak at times, but not bad. Who are we talking about, John? If it's Elaine, I might not agree with you. Susan, you fool, he said with a smile. From what she's told me, she thinks it's all her fault and that she has hurt you deeply. Elaine doesn't believe that, but I've never known Susan to take the blame for something she didn't do. She really cares about you, Harry. The only time I saw her stand up to her mother was when you asked her to marry you. Elaine was furious for weeks after she said yes. I can imagine, I said, smiling back. You're a good guy, Harry, he continued. You spend your life solving problems for your job. Think about it, Harry. Can you find a way to solve this problem? I don't want to see you as one of those sad, divorced dads taking their kids to the park or the zoo every other weekend. You deserve better than that. I got us both another beer, and we sat and talked about my job and the world, really anything except Susan and me. But his words kept echoing in my mind. Wasn't that true? A sad man who only saw his kids once every 2 weeks? John stayed with me for a while until Elaine came and said it was time for him to go. As he stood up, he reached for the table to steady himself. Wow, Harry, how strong is this stuff? He said, pointing to the beer. I checked the label. 6.6% alcohol, I replied. Goodness, and we've had 3 or 4 of them. That's it, Elaine, you're driving tonight, he said, handing her the keys, giving me a cheeky wink as they left. John's words stayed in my mind. I remembered seeing those dads he mentioned, in the park or at the zoo, trying to make the most of the short time they had with their children. Just thinking about it made me grab another beer and then another. By the time the other guests left, Maddie told Susan she thought Daddy was sick because I was talking differently. Susan helped me get up and walk inside. I sank onto the sofa, letting everything pass me by. She put Maddie and Jacob to bed, and even Alex went to sleep, leaving just the 2 of us. I've got to go, I said. Harry, you're not in a condition to drive. Just stay here, she urged. No, I'll get a taxi, I insisted. It's 10:30 on a Friday night. All the taxis will be busy in the town center with people coming from the clubs. No one will want to come all the way out here to take you home. Stay here for the night. It's your home, too. Okay, just bring me a blanket and pillow and I can sleep on the sofa, I said. I won't do that, she replied. I've been saving a spot for you to sleep for the last 6 months, and you're not going to waste it now. With Susan on my left and the banister on my right, I climbed the stairs to the bedroom. I woke up to voices outside the door. It opened slowly, and Jacob and Maddie came in. Maddie held a tray with 2 cups of coffee and a plate piled with toast. Breakfast, she announced. Thank you very much, I said. Did you make all this yourselves? Yes, Maddie answered. Alex said your car was still here and that if we were good, you might stay with us today. Will you, Daddy? Will you stay with us today? I don't know. It's not my turn this weekend, so maybe we should ask your mom. Susan was still lying down, covered with a sheet up to her neck. I looked down at her and lifted her chin gently to make her look at me. You really don't have to do that, I said, knowing she had often been hesitant before. I thought you liked it, she replied, looking a bit sad. I do, I said, very much, but I always thought you didn't enjoy it. If it makes you happy, I want to do it for you. I've been selfish, Harry. I've taken a lot from our time together, and you have always given it. Tonight, I want to change that." She began to show her affection with enthusiasm, and soon I felt warmth in my heart. I started to tell her. "Susan, I'm close," I called out, but she didn't pause. When the moment came, she smiled at me afterward. "That wasn't too bad," she said, standing up and giving me a tender kiss. She helped me onto the bed, and we cuddled and shared gentle moments. As I touched her back, she leaned closer to me. When I kissed her, she reacted with joy. Soon we found ourselves in a warm embrace, deepening our connection. We shared more loving moments together, exploring different ways to be close. She pulled me in and held me tight as we enjoyed each other's company. In the morning, I woke up to find her beside me, smiling. "Thanks for staying, Harry," she said. "It was wonderful, wasn't it?" "Yes, Susan, it was really nice, but I'm not sure how to explain this to Sarah." "We're still married, Harry. What happens between us is for us alone." I felt a wave of frustration. "There you go again, Susan," I said, "keeping things secret. Haven't you learned anything? I care about Sarah, and I won't deceive her. She might not want me anymore, but I have to be honest." She looked sad and wiped a tear. "I'm sorry, Harry. I didn't think it through." I drove back to the place I had begun to think of as home, feeling regret for what had happened. I should have walked away the night before. It had been a wonderful experience, stirring up all my old feelings for Susan. I had always enjoyed our closeness, but the way we connected last night felt even more special. However, love is not everything. I spent Sunday working and thinking about what to say to Sarah. Susan was right in some ways. There was no reason I couldn't be with my wife. But I had told Sarah that I loved her, and now I felt like I had let her down. The only thing to do was to tell her on Monday morning and be ready for whatever she might say. On Monday, she came to my house around 9:30. I told her we needed to talk. We sat at the dining room table, and Sarah looked a bit worried. "I have to tell you," I said. "On Friday and Saturday, I was with Susan. I was drunk on Friday, but I have no excuse for Saturday." She sat quietly for a few minutes, then said, "Is that all? You were with your wife, so what? You mean you're not upset?" "Harry, I've already said that I know you will always care for Susan. That means you might want to connect with her now and then. I can handle that, Harry. If I have to choose between sharing you and not having you at all, I know what I will pick. Now tell me about the rest of your weekend." I shared stories about the party and my talks with my mom and brother. I mentioned Susan's mom and my conversation with John, Susan's stepdad. "And that's why you got drunk?" she asked. I nodded. "Well, I'm not surprised. What surprises me is that she still hasn't told her parents what happened. I know you'll defend her, but it's not fair that she lets you take the blame." I took her hands and gave them a gentle squeeze. "I need to go shopping," I said. "Let's do that and grab some lunch while we're out." We went shopping, had lunch, and enjoyed our time together. When we got back, we cuddled on the sofa. Before she left to pick up the kids from school, I told her I had an appointment the next day and wouldn't be back until the afternoon. "That's fine, Harry. I have something to do tomorrow, too," she replied. That morning, Susan wasn't expecting company, so she was surprised when the doorbell rang. Her first thought was that it might be me, but her surprise grew when she opened the door to find Sarah there. Sarah knew exactly why she had come. She didn't wait for an invitation and walked right past Susan into the house. "Good morning, Susan. We need to talk," was all she said. "What do you think you're doing?" Susan asked. "You can't just walk into my house making demands." "I believe I can, and I just did. Now, are you going to call the police to have me removed, or will you talk to me?" Sarah replied. Susan led her to the living room. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked. "No, thank you," Sarah replied. "I came here to talk, not to chat." "What do you want to talk about?" Susan asked. I thought it would be clear. "I want to know when you're going to take responsibility for what you did to Harry." Anger was clear in Sarah's voice. "I have," said Susan. "I've told everyone it's all my fault." "That's not enough," Sarah shot back. "You haven't told anyone the whole story, not even your parents. No one believes sweet Susan could ever do anything that would cause Harry to act the way he does. How about the fact that he thinks he's raising another man's children?" When will you tell them about that? Susan started to cry, but Sarah remained firm. Oh, please, stop the crying, Susan. It might work on Harry, but not on me. Poor Harry has to live with everyone, even his own mother, thinking he's the one at fault. He won't say anything because he worries about how it would affect you and the kids. He hates the thought of people disliking you. So what's your excuse? Why can't you tell Alex? He thinks I'm the reason Harry hasn't come back to you, but we know it's what you did that keeps him away. I can't tell Alex. It would hurt him too much, Susan sobbed. Come on, Susan. You won't tell him because he might start to feel differently about you. Yes, I still call Harry his father because that's who he believes him to be. But people will dislike me, Susan said. Isn't that better than them disliking Harry for something he didn't do? Yes, of course it is, Susan said, fighting back tears. I told him on Sunday that I was being selfish, and it's true. I won't argue with you on that, Sarah said. But you're the only one who can change this. Susan cried again, and Sarah's caring side took over. She left to make coffee. In the kitchen, she found everything she needed, and by the time she returned, Susan was wiping her eyes. Sarah placed the coffee on the table and sat beside her. Do you remember when we used to go to those parties? Sarah asked. Susan managed a small smile. Yes, I do. I always hated them. When I finally told Harry we weren't going anymore. I was so envious of you back then, Sarah said. You were smart and charming, and everyone adored you, and on top of it all, you had the best guy in the group. My mother wouldn't agree with you on that, Susan said, sipping her coffee. Then your mother is mistaken, Sarah replied. She's not just mistaken, she's also quite snobby, Susan added. She has never forgiven Harry for growing up on the council estate. They both laughed at that. Or for being an engineer, Susan added. They reminisced, and the mood lightened. By the time Sarah left, they felt more like friends. As Sarah walked out, she turned back to Susan. Susan, do you really love Harry? I wouldn't want to live without him, Susan replied. Then you know what you must do, Sarah told her. I sat in the outer office of Mr. Gordon McCurry, Sarah's father. He had kept me waiting for 20 minutes. When his secretary said he would see me, I felt a bit nervous. Anderson. One moment, he said, his tone softening slightly. I paused, turning back to face him. Yes? You may not understand my perspective, but family ties run deep and I cannot easily sever them. I'm not asking you to sever ties, I replied. I'm asking you to consider what a supportive presence could mean for Sarah and your grandchildren. Sometimes the best way to be a father is to recognize when someone needs a change for a better future. He looked thoughtful for a moment, his expression shifting from anger to contemplation. Perhaps I need to think this over, he said quietly. That's all I ask, I said, then nodded to both him and Jennifer before stepping out into the hallway. As the door closed behind me, a sense of determination settled within. It was essential to advocate for those who needed support, especially when it came to something as critical as familial happiness. Anderson, how do you know my son-in-law? He asked. We went to the same school and lived in the same neighborhood, I answered. Yet you are quite different, he remarked. Thank you, sir. I'll take that as a compliment, I said. Jennifer did show me out, and as I made my way home, I hoped I had made a difference, although he hadn't given me any reason to feel hopeful. The next day, neither Sarah nor I talked about what had happened. I did ask her what she would do if she could get a divorce from Gary. When she said she would take that chance, I told her if her father wouldn't help, then I would. I explained that I couldn't give her the same support her father did. Harry, she asked, are you proposing something? No, I'm sorry if it sounded like that, I replied. What I mean is, no matter what happens, I will support you through a divorce and your studies. And what studies would those be, Harry? She asked. I thought you would want to continue your education so you can become more independent, I said. Harry, that's a great idea. Do you really think I could do that? She replied. I don't just think you could, I know you could, I said. Harry, you're so good to me, she said and hugged me. That weekend, it was my turn to have the kids, so I picked them up as usual. Alex decided not to come again. It hurt, but it was his choice. Perhaps it was something John said about fathers in the park, but I figured we could just hang out at home. Sarah came over in the afternoon. Jacob and Maddie liked her, so there was no problem. We had a great time together, and the kids went to bed feeling tired. When it started to rain, Sarah and I sat down with a glass of juice. I would have liked her to stay longer, but around 10, she left. She had hardly been gone for 5 minutes when the doorbell rang. My heart raced when I saw a soaked Alex standing there. I brought him inside and found some towels for him to dry off. "Does your mom know you're here?" I asked. He shook his head. I could see he was really cold, so I asked him to change out of his wet clothes and take a shower. While he was in there, I called Susan. "Hi, Susan. I thought you should know that Alex is here. He's soaked and freezing. I've put him in the shower to warm up." "Oh, thank goodness, Harry. I've been so worried. Thanks for calling." "What happened, Susan?" I asked. "I told him everything, Harry. I told him around noon. He was really upset and just left. I didn't think he would come to you. I called all his friends. Don't worry, Susan. He's here now. I'll take care of him and bring him back with the others tomorrow. You should get some rest." "Thank you, Harry. Good night." "Good night, Susan." I took a robe into Alex and asked him to come down when he was dried off. In the meantime, I made him a cup of hot chocolate. Gradually, he warmed up. I sat down with him on the sofa. "Okay, Alex, let's start from the beginning. What's going on?" I asked. "I'm so sorry, Dad. Really, really sorry," he said, starting to cry. "Sorry for what?" I asked. "For thinking it wasn't serious and that you were just using it as an excuse to be with Sarah." "You never told me that," I said. "I know, but I thought it just the same. I couldn't understand why you wouldn't give Mom another chance, but she hurt you, Dad. I mean, you might not even be my dad. Anyone else would be gone, but you're still here." "Let's not talk about that. Who else has been your dad?" I asked. "Only you. I've been awful to you. And then you gave me your kidney. I don't deserve it." He was crying hard. I felt him touching the scar on my back. "Was that from your back in the hospital? Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "I didn't want you to think I did it to make you love me. I asked your mom to keep it from you until everything was sorted out," I explained. "Why would she hurt you like that?" he asked. I remembered what John had said at the party. "Susan isn't a bad woman, Alex. She didn't mean to hurt me. She was just trying to get you. It wasn't right, but she was feeling weak and desperate. It's really tough for someone who wants kids as much as your mom wanted you. When someone offers a quick solution, it can be hard to say no." "But she did it again," he said. "Yeah, when she saw it worked once, it probably felt like she couldn't miss the chance for more kids." We talked about everything, and he started to calm down. Eventually, I put him to bed, tossed his clothes in the dryer, and went to bed myself. Sleep didn't come easy. I couldn't understand why Susan had chosen to tell him everything suddenly. I felt happy that she had shared the news with him, but I was still curious about why and where we would go from here. On Sunday, we had a nice day. There was a big motorcycle rally nearby, and Sarah brought Luke and Daisy along. The older boys were excited to see all the bikes. Even just walking around the parking lot was fun for them. The girls and Sarah enjoyed the events too, and they liked watching some of the riders. I was getting quite lost in the moment when my phone rang. It was Susan's cell phone. "Hello, Susan," I said. "What's going on?" "It's not Susan, Harry, it's John," said the voice on the other end. "Susan is here, but she's not really able to talk right now." "What do you mean, John? What happened? Is she okay?" I asked. "I'm sorry to worry you," he said. "She's fine physically. She's just very upset. I wanted to call and let you know what happened." I looked around and found a bench to sit on. "Okay, John, what's going on?" "She told us everything, Harry. She opened up about everything. Elaine is in shock. I shouldn't feel this way, but seeing Elaine so upset made me feel a bit better." "Are you still there, Harry?" "Yeah, sorry, John. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. She told Alex all about it yesterday." "Well, Elaine started this," John continued. "She went on about how Susan shouldn't have married you and that you're not good enough for her. For once, Susan stood up to her. She told Elaine that she should not have married you because you deserve someone much better than her dishonest daughter. Then it all came out. Elaine is just sitting here, unsure of what to do, and Susan has locked herself in the bathroom. I just sat there quietly. "Harry," John said, "the main reason I called is to ask when you'll be back with the kids. I don't think Susan should drive in her state, so I'll take her home. Can you stay with her?" I agreed, and then hung up. When I got up, Sarah, Daisy, and Maddie soon found me. Sarah asked what was wrong, and I explained. "What's going on?" I wondered. First Alex, now her parents. Then I felt a wave of panic and called back. John answered again. "John," I said, "something just hit me. It seems like she's decided to tell everyone. Can you let her know not to tell my mother or brother? Now that the truth is out, think about how it might affect our kids. I don't want them to lose a grandmother." As I put the phone back in my pocket, Sarah grabbed my arm and hugged it. "Come on," she said. "Let's get you to the hog roast." We had a wonderful day. Being out with Sarah was great, but having all 5 kids made it even better. Afterward, we went home to eat, and then Sarah and her children headed back home. I told Jacob, Maddie, and Alex that their mother was very upset, and that Grandma Elaine and Grandpa John would be there when I got them home. Alex said he didn't want to go. He wanted to stay with me. I told him it wouldn't be fair to leave while his mother was feeling this way. When we arrived, John was waiting for us, while Elaine stayed quiet. Elaine helped Maddie and Jacob get ready for bed. Alex went to his room. I went upstairs to see Susan. When she saw me, she smiled. I sat on the bed next to her and brushed some hair away from her face. I told them, "Harry," she said. "Yes," I replied. "You certainly did." "They don't blame you anymore," she added. "I think you need to get some rest now," I suggested. "Where is Alex?" she asked. "Alex is in his room and I'm staying here tonight. Just relax and get some sleep. You'll feel better in the morning." I gave her a gentle gesture of affection and left her to sleep. Downstairs, John and Elaine were sitting on the sofa. I offered them coffee or a glass of wine, but Elaine politely declined for both of them. She approached me, wringing her hands and looking down. "Harry," she said, "I owe you an apology. I didn't think well of you and even said hurtful things about you not being good enough for my daughter. But now I see that even after she hurt you, you still saved our oldest grandchild. You are worthy of my daughter, and we would be proud if you choose to stay with our family." "Thank you, Elaine," I replied. "What you said means a lot, but I must clarify something. Alex is my son, and I love him. I am the only father he has ever known, and I intend to keep it that way. The same goes for Maddie and Jacob." "Thank you," she said, wiping away a tear as she returned to John. They stayed a little longer, and I promised I would be there for the night. As they left, John put his arm around my shoulders. "Good for you, lad," he said. "Thanks for being so kind. It's not easy for her to say that." When I went back upstairs to Susan, she was fast asleep. I covered her gently, gave her a soft reassurance, grabbed a pillow, and went to sleep on the sofa. In the morning, I called Sarah to let her know I would be late getting home since I needed to help get the kids ready for school. She was busy, so we didn't talk long. I checked on Susan again. She was still sleeping, so I began waking the kids up. I had them all fed and dressed for school by the time she came downstairs. I greeted her warmly and went out to take the kids to school. When I returned, she was dressed and, despite some heavy eyes, looked like her usual self. She made coffee, and we sat down to drink it. "Why did you tell everyone?" I asked. "I knew they would keep blaming you, Harry, and that isn't fair," she replied. "I shared what her mother had said. About time," she said. "She never treated you well. My mother thinks everyone else is beneath us, but John is decent." "Well, you definitely showed her," I said. "Harry, we really need to get tests done. It's important for the kids to know who their real father is," she said. "I guess so," I replied, "but I'm not sure I want to find out." "Why not? Wouldn't knowing help?" she asked. "Think about it, Susan. What if one of them is mine and the others aren't? I want to love them all the same, but I can't be sure. And what about you? Would you treat them all equally? I think it's better not to know." "I really messed up, didn't I?" she said. I glanced at my watch and told her I had to go. Sarah would be waiting for me. I said my goodbyes and left, trying to think of a solution to my problems. When I saw Sarah, she looked happier than ever. She had let herself in and was making breakfast. "I bet you haven't eaten yet," she said. As usual, she was right. Over breakfast, she told me how much fun she, Luke, and Daisy had during our day out. Luke was impressed by my knowledge of motorcycles, and he got along well with Alex. Everyone thought it was a good day. Then she had more news. "Dad was waiting for us when we got home last night," she said. "He asked me about my marriage, and I laughed, saying, 'What marriage?' I was surprised. He really seemed interested. He even asked Luke and Daisy about their father. They couldn't even remember his birthday. Dad was nice, not like he usually is. He said if I could find proof of issues, he would help with a divorce and support me afterward. When I told him about going back to school, he loved the idea. He said I'd be the smartest and prettiest girl in college. I didn't want him to leave, which is rare. Where was Gary during all this? I asked. I'm not sure, probably at some casino. I think his no-show helped Dad decide. What happened then? She asked. I told her everything about Susan's mother and how I had put Susan to bed and slept on the sofa. When I mentioned the paternity tests, Sarah's face lit up. That's my proof, she said. If only one of them is Gary's. I've got him. Can I do it, Harry, please? I nodded, tears in my eyes. Everyone seemed to be telling me I should take a paternity test. Okay, I said, but can you make sure I don't find out the results? She looked at me and noticed how upset I was. Then she hugged me. That's when I made my decision. I'm sorry, Sarah, I said. I just can't do this anymore. I can't be a part-time dad. My kids need me. I have to go back. Do you really mean it, Harry? Are you really going back to Susan? She asked. I'm going back to my kids, I replied. And yes, I am going back to Susan because they need me. I need you too, Harry, especially now that I'm getting divorced. You're a big reason I want this. Is it because of her recent comments? She's just trying to make you feel sorry for her, I said. No, it's not that. We had a great Sunday together, and I should be able to enjoy those times whenever I want, not just when it's my turn. I want to be there when they come home, but I can't. I care about you, Sarah, but I can't choose between my kids and you. We sat there holding each other until we felt a sense of calm. Can we still see each other, Harry? She asked. I don't think so, I replied. It's hard for me to be around you without feeling conflicted. I don't think that would be good for Susan. When are you going back? She asked. On Saturday, I told her. In that case, we have 4 days, she said. Let's make the most of it. From that day on, we spent our week in a pattern of cherished moments between school runs. Sometimes we went out, but more often we simply enjoyed each other's company. In the evenings, I visited my children. Each night, Susan would ask me to stay, but I always went home. Friday came, and I dreaded that day. Both Sarah and I felt the weight of the moment. She tried to convince me that we could continue as we were. When we said our goodbyes, Sarah shared her final thoughts. I'm not going away, she said. If anything else comes up, I'll be waiting. I will gladly support you and your kids. I care about you, Harry, and I won't give up. After she left, I called Charlotte to let her know I could no longer house Sid and arranged for her to come over. Later that evening, I told Alex and Jacob that I had to move from my place and asked if they could help. They both eagerly agreed. Maddie said I was being unfair by not asking her to help too, so all 3 joined in. The next morning, I arrived to find them ready to go. I drove them to my house, and they helped me carry out my bags, computer, and books. We loaded everything into the back of the car. Maddie waved goodbye to the house. I decided to take a different route back so the kids wouldn't realize where I was going. When I finally parked in front of the house, everyone looked puzzled until Alex said, Dad's coming home? We got out of the car, and for the first time in 6 months, I used my keys to open the door. Susan noticed us and asked Maddie, Well, dear, where's Daddy's new house? It's here, Mommy. Daddy's moving here, she replied. I turned to Susan and said, If that's okay with you. She wrapped her arms around me and said, Of course it's okay. This is the day I've been waiting for. The first few days felt a bit strange. Everyone went out of their way to be kind to me. Susan's parents visited, and Elaine complimented me while John brought over a few beers. As things started to feel more normal, I decided I wanted a project to do with the boys. A client of mine had just bought a farm and found a 1964 Velocette Venom Clubman in the barn, which needed a lot of work. He offered it to me, and I was excited. When it arrived, the boys thought restoring it would be an awesome adventure. Susan wasn't too excited about motorcycles, but encouraged Maddie to take pictures of our progress. We enjoyed spending about an hour each day working on it, and it helped me bond more with Alex. Jacob joined in too, though he often got bored quickly. One day, Susan received a call from Sarah asking if the kids could come in for a paternity test. It could have been done at home, but the lab needed to verify their identities. Susan took them all along with their documents. Life with Susan felt great. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. I started going to the gym at the same time we used to go, hoping to see her. I worked hard to keep my mind occupied, but whenever I let my thoughts drift, there she was. I noticed I was losing my appetite, my sleep became restless, and I began to lose weight. Around this time, I noticed changes in Susan. She started joining me at the gym and began to lose weight too. She got a new hairstyle, changed her makeup, and started dressing differently. She went out more often, and I noticed some of her purchases were from stores in London. If it weren't for our good relationship, I might have worried she was seeing someone else. But things felt good between us, so I didn't bring it up. Still, I couldn't shake this heavy feeling inside me. It had been almost 2 months since I left Sarah and returned home, and I thought things would improve, but I felt just as lost as before. Through a client, I got tickets for the World Superbikes Championship at Donington. I decided to take Alex and Sarah's son, Luke, but when I arrived to pick him up, I had to wait in the car for him. I couldn't trust myself to be alone with her. When we got home, Susan had a surprise for me. I invited Sarah over for dinner on Friday night, she said. She needs to talk to you about something. I felt a little uneasy. You just want to see if I can keep my eyes off her, I replied. Her answer took me off guard. I don't mind if you two get close, as long as you don't leave me again. The week went by quickly and Friday arrived. The kids decided to eat at their usual time of 6 o'clock. Susan changed for dinner and I was stunned by how she looked. She wore a dark red satin dress that flowed beautifully. When I touched her back, I noticed something surprising. Are you wearing anything underneath? I asked. No, she said. It ruins the way the dress hangs. Just then, Alex was about to head out when the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find Sarah standing there. Hello, Alex, she said. How are you? Very well, thanks, said Alex. I was just going out, but please come in. Dad's expecting you. I got up to greet her. She beamed at me and asked, Hello, Harry, have you missed me? Every minute of every day, Susan called from the kitchen. I took her coat and noticed her silver satin dress. It had a low neckline that caught my attention. I thought she looked different, and I spotted a small bump. Harry, you might want to check your supplies. Someone has been sneaking in the real stuff, she said with a laugh, gently placing my hand on her bump. How long? I asked, feeling a mix of surprise and concern. About 3 months, she replied. Susan joined us saying, I see you've heard the news, Harry. Isn't it wonderful? Yes, it is amazing, I said. But how is this happening? My doctor said things have changed a lot in the past 15 years. It's not just about the number of sperm. It's also about how active they are, Sarah explained. I told him your sperm would be very lively and smart. I'm going to have your baby. Aren't you happy, Harry? I know I am. Let's talk about this after dinner, Susan said as she set the table. Susan outdid herself with a delicious 3-course meal. We chatted about my job, Susan's new style, and even my bike restoration project. After we finished coffee, Sarah shared more news. The house I used to live in was for sale. The family that owned it had moved abroad, and it seemed they preferred to sell rather than keep it. She expected the price to be around £450,000. Susan immediately wanted to buy it and asked if we could afford it. I knew it would be a challenge, but if we could sell our house, it might work, so I said I would think about it. The talk shifted back to Sarah's baby. You're happy about it, aren't you, Harry? She asked. Yes, I am happy, but it makes things more complicated. Honestly, I'm struggling to deal with everything as it is. Right now, I just want to be close to you, I said. I looked at Susan for a response, but she didn't show one. I don't know how I would handle seeing you often, plus I would be a weekend dad again. It felt like I was the only one worried. Susan and Sarah exchanged glances, and then Susan spoke up. We think you're looking at this the wrong way, Harry. You've been trying to keep Sarah out of our lives together, and it's making you unhappy. When we're alone, it's great, even better, because I enjoy making you happy. But I see how sad you are when I'm not around. I notice you trying to keep busy to forget about Sarah. Instead of pushing her away, maybe you should welcome her in. I couldn't believe what I heard. Was she really suggesting what many might dream of? I sat in silence for a moment. Are you really suggesting? That we need a bigger bed, Susan interrupted. A bigger bed means we need a bigger house, especially if Sarah and her kids are moving in. Sarah looked at me with hope. What do you think, Harry? Would you want me as part of your family? I know it might surprise some people, but we can handle that. If you can deal with your dad, you can handle anything. Oh, I said, so you know about that. Of course, he talks about you all the time. Harry Anderson, a brave man, she joked, imitating her father's Scottish accent. So what do you think, Harry? Susan asked. Well, it seems like you've thought this through, I replied, but are you sure you two can get along in this situation? Where do you think I've been this past month? Susan said. Sarah has been helping me just like she helped you, and we've become like sisters. Plus, we both love you. What could I say? I couldn't help but agree. They both stood up and hugged me. We were still enjoying the moment when Alex walked in. He looked at us and then up at the ceiling as if to say, "What can you do with grown-ups?" Once we calmed down, Sarah handed me an envelope. When I opened it, I saw it was from the DNA lab. I don't want to know, I said. Come on, read it, Harry, Sarah urged. I started to read. The key part of the letter was in a table format. Subject: paternity dispute with the alleged father, Gary Dawson Alexander Anderson probability. 0. 1%, Madeline Anderson probability. 0. 1% Jacob Anderson probability. 0. 1%. I was shocked when Susan handed me another envelope. After everything I put you through, Harry, I know I had no right to expect you to trust me, so I used your old toothbrush for a sample, she said. This letter followed the same format. This time, the alleged father was Harold Anderson, Alexander Anderson probability, 99. 9% Madeline Anderson probability, 99. 9% Jacob Anderson probability, 99.9%. They're all yours, Harry, Sarah said. Now for something lighter, Sarah added. She handed me a smaller envelope. Inside was an invitation, which read, Mr. Gordon McCurry and his wife Elizabeth request the pleasure of the company of Mr. and Mrs. Harry Anderson to celebrate Mr. McCurry's 60th birthday. I can't go to that, I said. The last time I saw him, he threw me out. He thought you might say that, so he wrote something personal on the back, Sarah said. He said you'd understand what it means. On the back of the invitation, he wrote, I am asking. Take some business cards, Harry. I think he has a business idea for you. That year was one of the hardest of my life. Sarah's father indeed had a proposal, and we were just about to start our business and IT consultancy service. My two wives, which is how I think of them, lived with our families in the large house I used during the separation. Luke got involved with me and Alex in restoring the Velo, and it should be ready to show by August. Gary did not challenge the divorce, so he never found out that it was all a ruse. I wish I could tell you what happened to him, but honestly, I don't care enough to find out. With her proof, Susan told my mother everything. Mom kind of accepts it since her grandchildren are still part of her life. John and Elaine still visit, and John always says, I knew you would figure it out, even though I didn't actually solve anything. Elaine surprises me too. She is still kind and refers to our living situation as avant-garde. If I were a bitter person, I might say I got my comeuppance. I had taken things from Gary, and it had a significant impact on his life. I am not someone who seeks vindication. Instead, I see that if none of those past events had occurred, I wouldn't have Sarah in my life. I wouldn't be excited about the arrival of our daughter. Another little one to call me Daddy. Daddy. That truly is the best word in the English language. Hey, audience! If you liked this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.